Hello, everybody. Welcome back. A lot going on in current times, and it affects all of us at varying levels. What we're trying to do with each and every show is just tackle this kind of situation that we're all in from a slightly different angle so we can put together a plan for ourselves and make choices that we won't look back on with regret. And so this provides us an opportunity as a stimulus package has been rolled out and is being changed almost every night as to who it will affect and how. And so what we thought we'd do today is go back and take a look at the PPP program and do an update on how it might affect 1099 contractors, specifically 1099 contractors and freelancers. And so while Brad and I could take a bunch of stumbling guesses at what this might look like, we thought we would have Travis Hornsby from the Student Loan Planner, who's a friend of the show. He's actually came on the show about 2 years ago and was talking about the nuance of the public student loan forgiveness program and who would really benefit from it, who wouldn't. It was honestly, it really pulled the curtain back and crystallized a lot of concepts for both of us. And we're going to talk about that as well in an upcoming episode, kind of update that for now. But he just released an article on his website, which was fantastic, looking at maybe some of the unintended consequences, the trickle-down effects of what's going on with coronavirus and the economy. We wanted to have him on the show to talk about that. So, Brad, anything else? Did I sum it up pretty well? Is that a pretty good intro for this?
That's a pretty good summary. Yeah, I've spent a whole lot of hours in the last week or 10 days researching this PPP program, the Paycheck Protection Program. And like you said, it has been updated by Treasury and the SBA. It seems like every day they're coming out with new guidance. So I'm trying to keep on top of it. But yeah, when I saw Travis's article here about how this relates to 1099 jobs, and then another article he has on his site called The Ultimate Guide to COVID-19 Financial Resources, I said, we've got to reach out to him. He's the perfect person to just have this conversation with. So Travis, welcome back to Choose FI.
Great to be on.
All right, man. So where do we start with this? I mean, can you kind of give us a sense? So Choose FI is an online business that works with a bunch of freelancers and contractors to help put the content into the universe. Student Loan Planner, to a large degree, I would imagine, is similar. And there are literally thousands and thousands of online businesses that lean heavily on 1099 contractors. What's going on?
I mean, so there's actually like 35 million 1099 miscellaneous forms that got submitted to the IRS, I think the most recent year, maybe 2018, 2019. So this is affecting millions and millions of people, right? Like everybody kind of assumes that independent contractors is the guy that comes and fixes your plumbing, right? For like $5,000 or something. And maybe he has like a subcontractor. Like, a lot of people hear contractor, they think like construction person, right? I mean, that's not the way the modern economy works anymore. So, online businesses, maybe this is kind of a silly point to make, but we don't all start off making 8 figures of revenue, right? I mean, maybe that's not the case for Choose FI. I don't know, but we don't come out of the womb making 8 figures of revenue as a small business, right? And so, what do a lot of businesses do when they're starting off, right? They still need marketing support, they still need sales support, they still need all these things. They need an assistant, right? But maybe you don't have the money to pay somebody 40 hours a week. Maybe you don't have, all this money that you're able to just put towards payroll and immediately hire 20 people because you're not venture capital backed. And so what do a lot of people do? A lot of small businesses out there, and this is especially true of us as online businesses, but a lot of people out there will go hire contractors and 1099 independent contractors. And why do you do this? You can't have an employee be a contractor because that's against the law. You're not supposed to do that because a lot of people might try to do it just to get around paying FICA taxes, right? Because the employer has to pay around 7.5%, and then the employee has to pay around 7.5%. So some people just use it to try to get around paying FICA taxes, and that's certainly not a good thing. But a lot of people, what they do is they hire people that are around the country. So if you give our business as an example, we have like 20 team members. They're located in all these different states. And it would be an absolute nightmare to try to negotiate all these different labor laws for 20 different states at the size our business is at. So we're significant, I guess, 7-figure business, but not 8-figure, 9-figure business where we have a full HR department, right? So that's where we're at. And so we have all these people that get paid on a 1099. So the thing with the PPP loan that seems so great is that you can take 2.5 times your average monthly payroll with a couple other expenses included, and then that's your PPP loan amount. So you put that loan amount out there, you calculate what that is, and if you use that towards payroll over a 2-month period, then that loan is fully forgivable. So this is basically a way for small businesses to freeze in place and keep all of their workforce on the payroll for 2 months, which is this huge lifeline to small businesses around the country, right? So for people that aren't aware of it, like the PPP, this was in the big stimulus bill. It's a $350 billion program, and they wanted banks to be the people that were going to issue this. So you have all these banks that are supposed to issue these loans to small business owners. But the thing is initially the bill said that contractors were included in payroll. And then the guidance that the Treasury Department ended up giving with their interpretation of the bill said that, well, because independent contractors can apply on their own, then you don't need to include them in payroll, right? So you're not allowed to include them in payroll as a small business owner because they can apply on their own. And so there's a bunch of problems with this. The first is if I'm having trouble getting my PPP loan submitted when I have 6 figures of cash and a banking relationship with a business bank and long-term, very high, well, not very high, but, a decent credit limit that I had to apply for and review, and I'm having trouble getting the PPP loan, what is the chance that the 20 people on our team that are independent contractors are going to be able to navigate this successfully on their own at a high rate of success, right? And so that's a big issue. And so right now the Treasury Department is saying, hey, online businesses or any business really, apply for this PPP, but you can only use your payroll, right? And so what that's going to do is it's going to force a ton of independent contractors to be laid off, probably millions. And so that's an issue that, the author of the legislation, Senator Marco Rubio, is aware of, but it's been total silence so far. So I think that this is going to be a major issue for anybody, any business or that employs contractors or any person who is a 1099 contractor.
Yeah, Travis, this will be interesting, right? Because we can weave a story here about your business, even about ChooseUpI theoretically, and also talk about the specifics of the program. Because I think the actual specifics are what people are ultimately looking for. Like how can we benefit from this? How can my company, how is this going to impact me as a contractor? But I think the actual story, the real world implications shows you what is and isn't working with these programs. So yeah, like you said, this has been billed as a loan, but it really is going to operate in practice as a grant. It's going to be a completely forgivable loan, assuming that you keep the same payroll. Now, like you said, this is the crucial distinction. Originally, when it was written, everybody thought that businesses would be able to include their W-2 wages, which are very clear, no question about that, and then also any payments they made to 1099 contractors. But like you said, to get around essentially double dipping, right? The business and also the independent contractor applying for these loans, the Treasury Department came out with additional guidelines that said it could only be the independent contractor. So where I guess you're concerned and where I'm concerned as well is that since the business entity, which in many cases, businesses are seeing their revenue drop 50, 70, 90+%, right? They need this loan, this forgivable loan as a lifeline to keep people employed, right? So that is really the intent of this entire program. And though as a business entity, you're only able to, in essence, assuming you have no revenue coming in, the only way you can pay your employees is through this loan or obviously any reserves you have. Hopefully people are following 5 principles, but let's assume it's just based on this loan. If the only amounts you're getting are based on your W-2 wages, there's no money left to go to contractors, right? Is that a pretty accurate summation of this?
Well, correct, because at the end of the day, everybody on our team that's an independent contractor meets the definition. They control their own hours. They control how the work is done. They do not work usually more than 20 hours a week. So it's very much by the book. And a lot of these people get the majority of their revenue from us, like the majority of their income. And so if a lot of people think, well, I'm not a travel industry or I'm not a hotel or I'm not a restaurant. So like how could you be affected? Well, student loan interest is 0% and it's for all federal student loans. So if you have 0% federal student loans, how are you going to make money off of, advertising for like refinancing companies, for example, right? People have less money. So even things that there's even more ways to save money on student loans now than there would be previously, but people have a lot less money. So that impacts the ability of those people to book, right? So travel rewards credit cards, previously those were paying advertising revenues and all of a sudden now people don't care about airline miles. People are just trying to survive. So a lot of this shows you how a business that you would think would not necessarily be that impacted from a revenue perspective would be absolutely decimated because of what's just going on in the economy right now. So there's no shame in that. If you think about every major company, every company out there pretty much is getting hammered by this, with the exception of Zoom, it seems like. So they're maybe some of the big tech, Amazon, right? Some of the grocery stores, maybe they're doing okay, but the vast majority of businesses are getting hammered by this. And, this is basically the federal government and the state government saying, hey, we want to freeze everyone in place so that we have an economy to come back to when this is all over. And the reason we're doing this is because we're going to save hundreds of thousands, if not millions of lives. So what a worthy goal, right? But to have this be successful, then you've got to take care of all the people, not just people that happen to get paid, one way versus another.
So if I have a listener, email me and basically say, hey, I heard you guys talking about the PPP and it sounds like there's a lot there, but I heard Dave Ramsey say, don't do it. We don't take out debt. Don't do it. Done. End stop. What's your perspective on this? And going head to head with Dave Ramsey here, it sounds a little controversial, but are you of the same opinion that this is a loan and we don't go into debt for any reason?
Well, so I just want to say that I think that he's done a lot of good for people, right? He's a good person overall. I don't think he's a bad guy, but I think his advice is more focused on preserving the purity of their brand versus having a rational approach to finances, right? So if you look at public service loan forgiveness, for example, he's super against that program despite the very high probability that it works out. And he's told people multiple times to pay off their loans when they could have gotten their loans forgiven on that program. And that's financial malpractice, kind of, in my opinion, right? And then same thing with this. This is a grant that if it turns into a grant if you follow the rules. If you don't take the time to follow the rules, then yeah, it might end up being a loan and you could potentially be in a bad situation if you use all that money to pay your rent when 75% of it has to go to payroll. Or if you didn't keep people on the payroll like you were supposed to, taking this loan out and you used it on other things, yeah, you could get in trouble on that. So I get a little bit of where he's coming from, but I think that the strength of their brand is to keep things super duper stupid simple, right? Which is debt bad, hit you over the head, debt bad. That's and the thing is that's bad advice. If you understand math, if you can read, if you have if your SAT score was above 1,000 out of 1,600, right, then you should be able to figure these things out and save a lot of money on them and not just take the pure emotion-based approach to money. You should certainly be aware of your emotions, but you should also be rational about it. And so in my view, telling people, business owners specifically, not to apply for the PPP is not just bad advice, it's freaking awful advice.
Yeah, and I think you hit it on the head there with the purity, right? That's an interesting word. And yeah, I agree. This is not debt. I'm not a fan of debt by any means, but the way this is written, like you said, to put a freeze. In essence, like this is a time warp to get people through a couple months and not have to lay off essentially everybody, right? We're recording this on April the 9th, and I think job numbers just came out. I think we're up to 15, 16 million jobs lost in the last 3 weeks alone. And imagine without a program like this. So I certainly see the enormous benefits of this. And yeah, as it's written, like you said, if you follow the rules, this is entirely forgivable. It is a grant, and it is a grant to keep your employees employed. So that's really the goal of it. But now let's kind of shift. So it seems pretty clear if you're a business entity and you have W-2 employees that you can get this forgiven, this loan, quote unquote, forgiven, and it turns into a grant if you dot all the I's and cross all the T's. Like you said, payroll has to be 75% of it. There's a 2-month testing period afterwards. You basically need to keep the people employed. Pretty straightforward. But now, Travis, let's kind of get to the independent contractor side. So as you said, 35 million, I think was the number you mentioned. There are all these people out there, and obviously, like you also said, they don't necessarily have banking relationships. They don't have oodles of money lying around. Like, this is not necessarily the business savvy. They don't have an HR department or a finance department to apply for this. Like, talk those people through what they can do today to apply for this loan, what you would recommend them documenting. I think these are the things that are going to really, really help people right now. Yeah,
I think that the best thing you can do is probably to get one of these guides that are out there and just really go step by step and just read through those guides to make sure that you have everything. So I've heard some good things about Cabbage with the K. People seem to be applying there if they don't have access to, a business bank account that's open and accepting applications. I've heard things about Nav. I'm not sure if it's nav.com, but Nav with PT Money. So if you type in PT Money, PPP, Philip Taylor, he's the founder of FinCon. He's got a fantastic guide to applying for this for every kind of person, not just a business owner, but also, independent contractors, solopreneurs. Basically, if you are a business owner, you should be applying to this program and then take a broad net as to what a business owner is, right? So I've also seen people talking about the EIDL, I think economic injury disaster loan, because people are saying you can get a $10,000 grant. It seems like I haven't done as much research on that one because it doesn't apply to us. This is really more, for solopreneur type people. But that EIDL thing seems to be capped at like $1,000, per employee benefit. So I think that the PPP is really the place to put your energy and your focus and just try to get that one. And, you might not be real clear about what you need to do, but in general, you're going to need, proof of your payroll. You're going to need proof of, you are who you say you are, proof that you have, at some banks, a business relationship with them prior to a certain date. So I would just say, just deep breaths, get one of these guides like PT Money's guide for PPP in front of you and read it. And then just go apply at one of these places. If you go apply at your business bank first, if you have one, and if they don't have one yet, then go maybe use one of these alternative sources like, Cabbage or Nav.
Yeah. And Travis, just to add a little bit more flavor to that. So it seems as if the way this is going to work for independent contractors, the simplest way is for them to look at their 2019 income, right? So their 1099 miscellaneous, they're going to look at what did they make in 2019. Now, this is, as we said at the outset of this episode, this is constantly evolving. So there's new guidance every day. It's basically what I would say to everybody out there is document what you're submitting. Just document it. You're not doing anything wrong if you put in for 2019 and then they come out and say, oh, the period should be from March 1st, 2019 to February 29th, 2020. There's a lot of moving pieces here. So that would be the very simplest way, is to look at 2019. So you just take your total income, you divide by 12 to get your average monthly income. And then it's basically just multiplied by 2.5. This is the easiest math you're ever going to do. So that is one option. Like I said, it does go into 2020. So theoretically, if you get a higher average monthly income by including January, February, or March of 2020, then just have a 12-month look back period from wherever you started. So you could do, like I said, March 1st, 2019 to the end of February 2020. You could do April 1st, 2019 through the end of March, whatever ultimately gets you the best answer. But clearly, obviously, this goes without saying, this needs to be 100% truthful, and you need to be able to back it up with support. It really is that simple. And I did this for our business. You just submit some documents proving this. 1099 miscellaneous in the case of contractors would be the easiest way. Your own tax return, if you filed your 2019 return, would be another option. And the beautiful thing here, there's nothing to be scared of. There's nothing to be worried about. This is a 10-minute application, and it is meant for people who have been impacted by this brutal and deep economic downturn that just came up abruptly. So I think, basically you have to attest that this impacted you, right? So clearly there are some ethics here, right? If your business is thriving and, it didn't impact you, it's hard to make that claim that it did. But obviously this comes down to each individual person applying for this truthfully as they see it. So I think from an actual mechanical standpoint, it is extraordinarily easy to apply for. And then, the way that it gets forgiven ultimately is that you paid out wages, more or less. That's kind of how this looks, at least from a business entity perspective. Again, as long as you document in a 2-month period after you got this loan that you kept the same number of people on payroll, like Travis said, you pay more than 75% of wages out of this money. then you're going to get this entirely forgiven. Now, there is a little bit of nuance, and to be perfectly honest, this is not 100% clear to me of how independent contractors get this forgiven. Because as Travis said, they're probably not going to be employed anymore. So nobody is paying them. But in essence, they are paying themselves. And I think that's how Sean Mullaney, the FI tax guy, in conversations that I've had with him, there's a quote in the law, or at least how Treasury has interpreted it, that said, quote, similar compensations. And I think that pretty much is, again, going to the intent of this, which is to keep money in people's pockets, to keep them employed. And in this instance, if you're an independent contractor, you're getting this money based on income you earned in the prior 12 months, or again, whatever testing period you looked at, and you're keeping yourself employed, more or less. So I think that's where it's come down on similar compensations. And again, we, as always with Choosify, we don't know everything. We are trying to work through this, but it is changing every single day. So we are committed to providing updated information as soon as we find it.
Yeah, and I think, in terms of deciding whether or not you were impacted by COVID-19 financially, I think they just need to ask, are you Zoom, Amazon, or are you a grocery store? Yes or no. And if the answer is no, then don't feel guilty. You were impacted, I promise. I mean, so I think the hardest part of this application is, so it's divided by 12 and multiplying by 2.5 is pretty easy, right? The real question is what date do you choose? What 12-month look back do you choose for this period of expenses, and what goes into that? What are you adding in? So for example, we have liability insurance. I wouldn't have known to include that in our total that we're supposed to sum up for all the different expenses that are eligible for this. But my business manager kind of caught that, and she said, "Hey, you didn't include your liability premium." So there's these little miscellaneous things, and that's why I want people to go to a specific blog post to just make sure that they've looked through all of those items so they can include that. And then I'll say this too about payroll. Worst case scenario, say you have to use it on specifically W-2 payroll as a contractor, and you get approved for the amount of money, and some weird rule comes out that you've got to use it on W-2 wages. Well, hey, guess what? That's actually pretty easy to do. I mean, if you have an accountant, you can go hire one. You can spend a couple $1,000 and set up an S corporation and ask the accountant to do quarterly payroll, in the second or third quarter or something, whenever you have to get that money out the door, and you can literally kind of quote unquote pay yourself. And for us, I mean, we're even if we don't get any of our contractors, which is 95% of probably our payroll expense as contractors, we still pay ourselves a W-2 wage, the kind of the core people. So we'll get 30 grand maybe. Which is a lot less than the six-figure amount that we would get if we could include contractors and keep them all employed. But 30 grand is still worth paying 2 grand to a CPA and paying their fee and having them explain things to you, right? So I think that just don't stress about this is the point. Just try to figure out what goes in that numerator, and then you kind of figure out what dates you're using, and then you figured it out mostly.
Yeah, I mean, and even if for employers that aren't allowed to take this out on behalf of their contractors to be able to pay their contractors directly, the fact that you're able to get, I don't know, in your case, you said around $30,000, that is going to offset some of your core expenses. So it will likely provide you a little bit of runway to keep more of your contractors earning money for longer. So I think of this as a pause, give everybody a little bit of time and space to recalculate what's going on. And hopefully over the next couple months, we see the economy and the coronavirus kind of separate in terms of where they're going. They're not both going in the exact same direction. We don't know, but if we can buy ourselves a little bit of time, I think more variables become clear. And so that's the hope for this. Buy yourself a couple months time. So this is a grant with a pretty significant carrot at the end.
It is. And I just want to make people aware of the real risk with this program is all these independent contractors. I mean, best case scenario, they get approved for this on their own, right? And so best case scenario, they get approved for this bailout kind of money and they get paid their wages, right? But the problem is this. What if we as business owners don't have the money to give them their jobs back at the end of this? That's the point of freezing everyone in place, is giving the business owners the money to pay their people so that when eventually this thing, this economic, winter that we have thaws, guess what? People are going to sign up for travel rewards credit cards en masse when this is all over, right? When we don't have to worry about COVID-19 anymore, I tell you what, people are going to be wanting to take vacations like you would not believe, right? And so all these travel blogs are going to come back, and all these, things that got put to the side, people are just going to just go to so many restaurants, their livers are probably going to fail, right? I mean, that's kind of what I'm planning to do when this is all over, right? So I think that's the concern, is that when the contractors get paid just from themselves, they're not going to, I can't make them work if they're getting paid directly from the PPP program instead of me paying them through those funds. They're going to have to just sit on the couch. And some of those contractors are saying, you know what? I'm just going to pretend that you paid that to me because the amount that I get is based off of what you paid me. And so I'm going to work, I mean, that's really generous of them. I told them that I don't expect that at all. I can't expect that. But that's the real risk, is that you have all these people around the country that are contractors literally sitting at home doing nothing and not, contributing to economic productivity. And then you have this death spiral where we as business owners are not able to give them their jobs back at the end of this. So that's the big concern, and why I hope that Treasury will amend that guidance to allow us to continue paying our contractors.
Yeah, there's a lot here. I don't think any of us want to go into a death spiral. So stay the course, and let's pursue the grants, and let's pursue the long pause here. Stay optimistic, because you don't really have another choice. All right. Now, I tell you what, man, that got dark really, really fast. Let's lighten this up just a little bit here. Here's what I want to do. So, Travis, your website and your business, I should add, is called the Student Loan Planner. And I say that to mention that 2 years ago, we had you on the show to talk about the nuance of the public student loan forgiveness program and who should apply for it and who really shouldn't. And I know, because in our talks offline, that in the last 2 years, still 2 years later, you're having around 5 people a month reach out to you to go through these consultations and figure it out, because the implications of making the right choice could be tens and tens of thousands of dollars and years of your life. There's a lot of money on the table here, and this is an important calculation. So it was 2 years ago. I think we should probably update that conversation with, the current environment that we're in, because there's a lot of stuff that's kind of shifting around us. So would you like to come back on the show and we'll update that episode for 2020 and beyond?
Absolutely. There's a lot to do that has happened with the stimulus act that's going to save people a lot of money.
All right. Awesome. Well, again, Travis from studentloanplanner.com, thank you so much for joining us on the show, and we'll talk again next week.
Thanks so much.
All right, everyone, stay tuned. Next week, we'll follow up with Travis. And in the meantime, if you want to get more information on what him and his company are doing, just go to studentloanplanner.com/choosefi. All right, guys, we'll see you next time as we continue to go down the road less traveled.